I'm going to preface everything I say in this Wish World reaction with this. Maybe it pans out. Maybe it works out next week in the reality war. Maybe all of the questions I have that don't get answered do get answered next week in the reality war. Maybe all of the themes that I don't think get built upon or developed in Wish World do end up paying off in really significant and brilliant ways in the reality war. But when it comes to Wish World in and of itself as a part one of a two-parter, leading into the finale of not just this season, but potentially the finale of the 15th Doctor, Ruby and Belinda, the whole Bad Wolf, Russell T Davies 2 Enterprise, depending on what happens with Disney or the BBC and everything in the coming days and weeks. So when it comes to Wish World, I think it's conceptually really fascinating. I think there's some really interesting ideas behind it. I just don't think that the episode gives them time to breathe. I just don't think that there's enough space for all these interesting concepts, these interesting ideas, because there's so much finale stuff to do. There's so much, we got to set up these two Ranis, we got to bring Comrade back, we got to set up Unit and Mel and these big bone creatures and stuff. And I think that I'm not alone in that. I think the fandom consensus on Wish World, even from people who liked the episode, is that I wish that we'd spent more time in the Wish World. I wish that we'd spent more time in this artificial reality, because the way it just currently stands, it's some interesting ideas, some interesting concepts that just aren't really coming to the forefront. I think that Wish World is an interesting way to recontextualize this whole season of Doctor Who, because a big chunk of the main villains in this season of Doctor Who have basically been teenage boys. Like, if you go for the Robot Revolution, you've got Al, who's just this like incel gamer kid who becomes the AI generator. You go to Lucky Day and you've got Comrade, who's a grifter podcaster. You go to the Interstellar Song Contest and you've got this radicalized genocide survivor turned terrorist genocide potential causer who gets tortured by the Doctor. And also in 73 Yards last season, you've got Roger Ap Gwilliam, who is this populist pseudo-fascist prime minister of the United Kingdom. And now with Wish World, we're kind of seeing what Russell's mission statement is for this approach to tackling all of these villains. And when you have Conrad, who is wishing a whole world into reality, and it's a world that's built upon heteronormativity, that's built around, this sort of like almost suburban nuclear family wet dream of these, the guy goes to work at this cushy office job while the wife stays at home and makes the babies and looks after the babies and stuff. There's Belinda's grandmother who comes into the scene and talks about Poppy, baby Poppy, who is the Doctor and or John Smith and Belinda's baby, and is like, oh, it's the same path, you great daughter, what did she say, great daughter, great mother, great grandmother, etc. Like there's a whole system, there's a whole world mythology that Comrade is building that is essentially centered around conservative talking points. In this story, it also becomes significantly more explicit, and Emmett's right, there's another scene of Carla selling out Ruby Sunday. Like, this is what, the third or fourth time that this has happened, when Carla's just rejected Ruby. Ruby cannot catch a break. Carla is like, in every other timeline in the Doctor Who universe, Carla's a piece of work. It's so bad. I don't think it's a coincidence that Comrade, in this world that he has envisaged, has got Shirley Ann Bingham in a wheelchair asking for handouts on the street, asking for change, asking for money, which is basically what he said that she was doing on Unit's payroll in Lucky Day when he was live streaming. You've also got the Doctor talking to Ibrahim, who's on the desk next to him at this insurance place that they're working at. And Ibrahim's wanting to ask Kate Stewart out on a date, and the Doctor's like, oh no, she'd be lucky to have you, you're a beautiful man. And then he instantly turns and is like, well, you can't call another man beautiful. And the Doctor's like, well, I didn't mean it like, it was a slip, I didn't mean it like that. I think that's really interesting, the idea that you have this community of disabled people that are like out of sight, out of mind, because Conrad doesn't really see them as people, he doesn't really think about them, they are invisible to him, which is how they're able to essentially plan a potential uprising. That's really interesting. I think it's also a great bit of subtext that the reason that the disabled people in this story are able to see through the cracks of their reality is because they're already living in a world that's not designed to accommodate them, that they're already living in a world that's not that sort of sees them as a problem to be solved, as opposed to an organic part of the human experience. I think that's really interesting. Do we think the nobles threw out Rose? That's really interesting. Yeah, maybe they did, or maybe Rose never came out in this alternative version. Where on earth is the 14th Doctor? God, I have no idea. And then you've also got the Rani and Mrs. Flood, aka the other Rani, the more subservient Rani, up in this bone palace up above. That's the least interesting stuff in the episode, in my opinion. I love the idea that these doubts that humanity have are characterized as these slips, and they've got these big bins outside of their homes where they're able to put all the porcelain mugs and throw them away. I think that's really interesting. It's a really great visual as well, when the mug falls through the table and Belinda opens the kitchen cupboard door and they're just full of all of these mugs, because this clearly just happens on the regular. That's really interesting. And also you have Conrad, who's broadcasting these propagandistic messages up in his bone palace up above. I think that's really interesting. But then again, so much of it is obfuscated. It's not given much time to actually really develop into something more interesting and more profound. Like, Mel is this older, lonely, single woman who just exists in this universe. We never get any time with her, so we don't know what she does in her day-to-day. It would have been way more interesting if, like, I don't know, it cuts to her at one point, just sat in her living room, just watching Conrad's broadcasts and doing nothing. Like, you could even, if you really wanted it to be, stab in the heart, it would have been like a time-lapse of her just sitting on the sofa all day as the world moves around her, because that's just what Conrad expects of women in her position. So that would be really interesting. It's also interesting that the idea that the Doctor can't call Ibrahim beautiful, and that's a big taboo in this universe, because it's same-sex attraction. But when Kate calls the Rani beautiful when she's flying up to her bone palace on the weird jet ski thing, no one brings that up? Is it just male on male same-sex attraction that's a stigma in this universe? Or is it like, cause that's not how conservatism works, they're going to send lesbians to the gas chambers after, you're not going to be exempt from this. But yeah, it's strange as well. Like, there's a really weird through line. The idea that far-right people are obsessed with birth rates, and that is something that Russell T Davies has clearly picked up on. Conrad and the Rani using a baby as like the origin of this whole new universe. They're obsessed with birth rates. But one reason far-right people are obsessed with birth rates and wanting birth rates to be up isn't because they want to provide support to parents or support, struggling couples and struggling families to raise children. Otherwise they would, support childcare, they'd support healthcare, things like that, but they don't. They care about birth rates because they want more white babies. That's explicitly what they want. So why does Conrad's fantasy universe, which is based on this subtext, have the Doctor and Belinda as a non-white couple with a non-white baby be perceived as the ideal family structure? I feel like that's a question that this era of Doctor Who is way too afraid to have because you have a black Doctor. But if you're willing to tackle that sort of thing in Dot and Bubble, you can sort of tackle it here, right? Like, maybe don't have the Doctor be in the same position as Ibrahim and Kate and other people when he goes to unit for work. Maybe have him be the cleaner. Maybe have him be on a much lower rung in society. Russell's picked up on the subtext, has picked up on the messaging of the alt-right, but hasn't managed to manifest it cohesively in Wishworld. And then you've got this scene where Belinda meets her mother and grandmother, and she remembers, or doesn't remember, I should say, Poppy's birth, and then she goes outside, runs into a field, and then screams at a river. That's a, great visual. What does it mean, apart from she's not happy? I feel like we don't get enough time with Belinda itself to kind of work there. I don't know. It feels like Belinda is uncharacterized. A big mood Belinda, yeah. Would that not be too similar to Human Nature, though? Yeah, but it might be repeating a beat, but in a different context. And also, some things are true because they're true. Like, if this is the subtext you want to do, that racists are going to racist, then you kind of have to tackle that still. You know, she screamed by a river song. Ah, the clues are in plain sight. It's like the snowman. You could have caught me earlier. I gave you all of the clues. RTD probably showed the inconsistency of right-wing rhetoric. That is something that Russell has clearly picked up on that I think is really admirable. Very much in the same way how Pete Mattheig has picked up in Lucky Day that Conrad is not some skeptic. Conrad is not some guy who needs a better argument to be shown the way. No, Conrad is an explicit grifter. He knows he's lying. He lies for clout, he lies for profit, he lies on purpose, and very rarely do you get media that's willing to explore that in right-wing circles. That's really, really good. However, in Wish World, he's also noticed that right-wing ideology, by its very nature, is completely incoherent to the human experience. And that's, I think, what Wish World is trying to say. The idea that the Rani's plan is creating this conservative wet dream. However, it can't hold because it ignores too many people. There's too much injustice. There's too much fighting against what it means to be human. Whether it be ignoring disabled people, whether it be, the gender dynamic, whether it be all of these inconsistencies that add up day to day, that create these slips, and apparently that's the whole point. And I think that's really fascinating, because if you've ever watched any of my response videos, responding to reactionaries, responding to online conservatives and grifters and stuff, you'll probably know that, yeah, they lie all the time, obviously. However, that is part of the point, because in order to give yourself over to that ideology, you have to check reality at the door. You can't bring reality in with you. It requires a degree of willful schizophrenia in order to engage with it. The idea that immigrants are coming in to steal all your jobs and also claiming all the benefits. These two ideas completely clash with each other, but you'll find people who wholeheartedly and sincerely go with that thought process. You'll have people, whether it comes to commentating on Doctor Who, the idea that bringing back Martha Jones in The War Between the Land and Sea is bad and stupid and woke, but somehow bringing her in 2007 was okay. The idea that Captain Jack can kiss a man on the lips in 2005, but bringing him back in 2020 and him kind of really downplaying his, pansexuality in Revolution of the Daleks, that's all bad and woke. But it's this, it is cognitive dissonance, but it's a deliberate one. It is in order to engage with this, you have to basically believe all of these lies at the same time. It's Schrodinger's lie. It is the idea that I will accept all of these different ideologies. I will accept all of these different realities, these alternative facts, in order to believe what I believe, in order to say what I want to say, to own the libs, etc., etc. That's fascinating. The idea that the Rani's plan is to create this conservative world that is, by its nature of being a conservative world, is so ideologically incoherent, is so against the human condition, that it has to break. And that's the Rani's plan. That's fucking fascinating. However, it's not given the time to breathe. It's not given the time to really manifest effectively enough in the text, because we don't spend a lot of time in the Wish world. We don't spend a lot of time in the day of John Smith, or Belinda, or Mel, or Kate, or Ibrahim. We have too much finale shit going on. We have we have so much stuff happening. All of that kind of gets thrown to the wayside, and then by the third act, the Doctor and Belinda cross over the threshold, and I imagine that the threshold is going to have some sort of importance in the next episode, or it's going to be explained as a key part of the universe or whatever, because why spend an entire scene having the Doctor and Belinda cross over that threshold unless it's wholly symbolic? But this is an episode where I think it feels like either, part 1 of 3, kind of like Utopia. And Doctor Who may need to super chat that. This should have been the Utopia of this season. I agree. Wish World feels like it's the opening part of a miniseries. It doesn't feel like it's part 1 of 2. And I think that the whole Wish World itself, while it is taking cues from stories like Human Nature, while it is taking cues from, even the alternate reality that we see in Ascension of the Cybermen, the weird flashbacks to Division that the Doctor is seeing, framed through this guy who's becoming a police officer in the countryside. It feels like that part, which is the most interesting part of the episode, for me at least, kind of has to fall apart so that the Rani can establish a plan, so that the Rani and Mrs. Flood, or the two Ranis, are able to really get a couple of bits of interaction with each other, so that we can set up Ruby and Shirley Ann Bingham, and so we can set up all of this stuff, and then we can set up Poppy, and then we can set up the Vindicator and all of the big skeletal beasts and the weird Guillermo del Toro-ass, weird creatures that are saying all the doubts and the numbers and stuff. I'm really looking forward to reading the Wish World novel, but in terms of the episode itself, there's a ceiling on it. There's only so interesting it can be. It has to bring back the Rani, it has to bring back Omega, it has to bring back Susan, it has to bring back Rogue, and all of this other stuff, and it doesn't gel, doesn't cohere. Wish World is not that interesting a story to watch because all of these interesting details are not coming to the surface, but it's an interesting story to think and talk about. But the problem is that there's a bunch of things that don't gel or cohere. Like the idea that the doubts are the whole point, and that's what the Ranis say, that the doubts are the whole point, and that is what causes the reality to shatter, particularly the doubts of a Time Lord. That's why the Doctor is in the Wish World. But if that's the case, why does Mrs. Flood go down herself as a police officer to cut out all of the doubt, if the doubts are the point? It's a great scene. I think that Anita Dobson really chews the scenery, and she is clearly having a lot of fun in that policewoman's outfit. These things aren't gelling here. I thought doubts were the point, so why are you wanting to cut them out? I don't get it. The idea of the Rani filling the Doctor's head with doubt, with, were we lovers during the Time War? Do we do that? People said this about us. Do you think that's true? While I think that that's a deliberate choice to try and throw doubt in the Doctor's mind, why did she have to do it during a really sourceless dance scene? It kind of felt like we were doing a worse version of I Can't Decide from the Master in Series 3, from Rasputin in The Power of the Doctor. This beat's been done so many times. I don't get why we need two Ranis for this. It kind of feels like it's eating precious screen time here. I kind of wish that we either had Mrs. Flood as a completely original character, and she probably, this would be so much more interesting if she was a more original character. I feel like, it's great. It's a great get for the show to have Archie Punjabi as the Rani. Just to have Mrs. Flood and Anita Dobson. Just do it. just have her be an original villain. Go Series 6 Madame Kavarian with it. Maybe with less of the transphobia after the fact. And there's also just some really strange directorial and editing choices. If you go back to the first scene, when the Rani is in 1865 Bavaria, and she takes the seventh son of a seventh son of a seventh son, when she takes this god, who's revealed to be Desiderum, who's the god of wishes, if you watch that scene, it's so flatly directed, because you've got this seventh son of a seventh son, the father of this god baby, who is just stood behind the Rani while she threatens to take the baby and then turns his wife into violets. And the husband's just stood around doing nothing. It's so flatly directed. There's no good staging to it. And also because we've not established what the Rani's deal is, what her power sets are, what her abilities are, or what basically makes her an interesting character. Okay, she just turns them into violets, just turns them into ducks, turns them into an owl, and then gets off on a horse. All right, okay. It's a nothing opener. It's really. It's a really poor opener, in my opinion. She takes the baby, the dad is right there, the kids are there, the mother's in bed, and she does the whole thing, I'm gonna take the baby, and he stood behind her for a good minute, and his wife gets turned into violets, and he's just stood behind her the whole time. The blocking's really poor. He doesn't do anything to stop her. He doesn't try to get his child back. He's just shocked and confused. I don't think this is a performance thing. This is just a lack of direction. If I was doing it, sorry to be that guy. If I was doing it, I would have him in the bed, not in the bed, but by the bed. His priority is looking after his wife, and then she falls apart in his arms, so that the Rani's not directly in between them both, because the blocking doesn't work. Oh, there's this bit as well, when she's like, oh, I am the Rani. Like I said, this is the really awkward blocking. And then, oh, Anita Dobson, I'm also here.
And I am the Rani.
Why is that line said in an extreme wide? Why is it framed like this? This is what I was on about earlier with Utopia, and how these reveals and these moments are given such gravitas, and it's just not here. I think that Alex is way more interested in depicting the size of the set than capturing the performances or getting, you know, a dramatically impactful angle.
The child at home. Her name is Poppy.
And then it cuts to these flashbacks from this episode. Why do we need that? Really weird. I understand sometimes the flashbacks are there for, like, to establish reality. I think that the flashbacks are okay in some contexts. I think that the Vindicator one was fine as a little, this is the thing he's been doing all series. I think that the flashback to Mrs. Flood freeing Conrad from prison was fine, because that was 3 episodes ago. But the ones from Poppy, from this current episode, come on, man, we're 7 episodes into the season. Give us a little bit of credit, please. And it wasn't until somebody mentioned it on Twitter that I realised that in this era, correct me if I'm wrong, has there even been, with the exception of Empire of Death, has there actually been a previously on Doctor Who during this Bad Wolf era? Has there actually been a 30 to 60 second little, here's what's happened recently, that's happened in the series? Why not do that here? It's really strange. I don't know why they didn't have one of those to establish the Rani, to establish the Doctor and Belinda and the Vindicator, to establish Conrad. Why do they not have that? Have that instead of the flashbacks. But then again, that would eat into the 45-minute runtime, which this season insists on having, apart from the reality wall, that's going to be 65 minutes. Thank God. If this is meant to be a streaming first show, even if it is broadcast weekly, then why on earth are we still keeping the 45-minute runtime? Wish World would be so much better as a 60-minute story if we could see what Mel is doing in her day-to-day, if we could see what Ruby is doing, where she's living. Because she's been kicked out by Carla, obviously. She's on the run from the Thought Police, probably because she said Free Palestine or something. She's on the run from the Thought Police, from the Twitter police. What is she doing? Where's she living before she meets Shirley Ann Bingham? What's going on here? I feel like the novelization of Wish World will be fascinating, but the episode in and of itself, she's sleeping on a John Smith's porch. Yeah, she's under the bed. Yeah. I kind of just wish that more time was dedicated to the most interesting part, which was the Wish World stuff, which is the subtext, which is the idea of this sort of faux utopia that's meant to cause mental illness in the people in it. That's meant to cause all the doubt. That's meant to, all of these contradictions become all-consuming and eventually rip reality apart. That's brilliant. And then it just becomes, oh, it's the Rani's plan. Isn't it a bit strange that, you know, the Doctor gets a gay best friend and then they instantly send him to a hell dimension? That's weird, but also, how did he get that message out? Why is Susan also part of that message, and how does he know that tables don't do that? It just feels like, oh, I know Rogue from last season, and then that's kind of it. The Rogue cameos are really weird, and if you go on the official Doctor Who Facebook page, they put that clip on of Rogue on the TV screen, and 90% of the comments unironically think it's Captain Jack. I'm like, oh god, something's gone wrong here, I think. Also, it doesn't really help that it looks like Rogue filmed it on his iPhone, and it was apparently done during the filming of Rogue, so like they didn't bring Jonathan Groff back for it. They had him film it while he was already filming Rogue last season. So they've clearly had like a long time to prepare for this like finale, and then he just turns up and it's like no clarity to it. Chat. Do you think that Anita Dobson was wasted here? Because Anita Dobson has been putting in so much work, like in basically across her entire career, and then she's cast in Doctor Who as a really fun, enigmatic villain, and then she's immediately, when her game plan is revealed, immediately made subservient to the Rani. I think this would have been so much better if I get Archie Panjabi for a different role in the near future, but just have this be the Mrs. Flood finale. Just have this be Anita Dobson. She's clearly having so much fun. She's a really great presence on screen. I think she's capable enough to carry this finale on her own, And it's a shame that we're not going to find out if she did. It's a shame. I think they made it up as they went along. Yeah, so Russell apparently said when he first wrote Mrs. Flood and cast Anita Dobson that they didn't have anything in mind for who she was going to be. And they weren't even intending her to be a recurring element in the series. It just wasn't until they cast Anita Dobson and she had so much fun on set and she was so great to be around that Russell started writing her more and including her more. It's a very strange one. I don't understand why they had a great actress in Anita Dobson and they just didn't really have faith in her to carry the finale on her own. Fine, make her the Rani, whatever, but don't immediately undermine her. I'm aware that the reality war is probably going to have Anita Dobson's Rani get one over on Archie Punjabi's Rani and like gain back control. But what's the point? I don't know. It's a weird, yeah. I don't know. I'm not angry. I'm just bemuddled. I'm confused. And then also you throw in Omega. And because Omega has not been mentioned on screen since part 2 of Silver Nemesis back in 1988, like, no one's going to know who that is. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't... a bad Time Lord. That's all the context that viewers are given. And Darius asks, I'm still going to ask, where is 14? Where is the 14th Doctor in Wish World? Where is he in all of this? Yeah, I don't know. It's just a massive... looming shadow over any Earthbound story now. Where is the 14th Doctor? Because Rani even asks the Doctor, you're probably wondering, where is your TARDIS? Well, technically, there's 2 TARDISes on Earth right now, isn't there? There'll be John Smith's 15th Doctor's TARDIS, and there'll be 14th Doctor's TARDIS in Chiswick. What's going on? Yeah. Russell has forgotten that he parked him. I don't think he's forgotten. I think it's just, please don't ask, please don't ask, please don't ask. Where is her TARDIS? Yeah, we don't know how she got there. Something to do with the Vindicator. She can clearly travel across time and space, but maybe it is the Bone Palace. Wishworld's an odd one. It's got some really strong production values, with the exception of some really flat direction, like I mentioned in Bavaria. Some really strange editing decisions, like the Poppy flashback, like the idea to include Mel Bush but then have her not do anything. Some really strange inconsistencies in terms of its ideology and what it's trying to say. And then before it can elaborate on any of that, oh no, we've got to bring the Ranis in. We've got to have the Rani make Comrade a little sandwich. We've got to have Desiderum make a little ha 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 ha. We've got to bring in the Underverse. We've got to bring in Omega. Like, I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in all of that fluff. I'm not interested in the fan service. I want the story. I want to know what Rusty Davis has to say through these stories. That's why I was excited for the writer of It's a Sin and Years to come back to write it. Why I was excited for him to come back. I didn't want Rusty Davis to come back to bring back the bloody Rani. I wanted him to come back because I was interested in what he had to say and how he could use Doctor Who to say it. And I think that if you are wanting to use Doctor Who as a potential vessel to educate kids and younger audiences on things like incels and podcast grifters and the manosphere and the inherent contradictions of conservative ideology. If you want to do that, then put it front and center. Make the story about that. Emphasize that. Elaborate on that. 8-year-old kids might actually benefit from having that education. But no, they don't give a shit about the Rani. They don't know what Omega is. Let's actually break this thing down. So we know that this, from the Star Beast up until the Reality War, has been one big plan and story arc. With that in mind, what do we have to resolve? Captain Poppy, Susan, Rogue, ? Maybe him being in the Hell Dimension is all we're going to get, so that there's a question mark there. The Boss, so does that mean the Meep comes back? We've got the 2 Ranis, Omega, whatever Mel's doing, Conrad, Shirley plus Ruby, whatever's happening there, Belinda getting home, plus meeting parents. God Baby. Oh, yeah, God Baby. The Master in Tooth. 14th Doctor, ? Regeneration, ? Russell did say he had no plans for the Tooth. He also said that the season would be good. I'm kidding. No, Song in Ruby Souls, Magic's... That was last season. We are not in Apple Tree Yard territory, folks. Empire of Death was just really bad. Kid? Nah, that's not happening, chat. This is not Secret Good 4th Sherlock episode. Interstellar content, that's not happening. Sorry. How Rupert made it snow. That was apparently fixed in Empire of Death. And didn't Kid and the Doctor say they'll meet again? I guess. No, if Kid is also... Okay, we'll throw in Kid ? If that's also, what is Apple Tree Yard? Apple Tree Yard is, okay, so season 4 of Sherlock was so bad that even its biggest defenders were like, actually, it was bad on purpose, and there's actually a secret good fourth Sherlock episode this season. And the Sunday, I think it was the Sunday, after Sherlock had finished, there was a new drama starring Emily Watson called Apple Tree Yard, which is an adaptation from a book, I think. And Sherlock super obsessed fans were like, this episode is actually a secret fourth good Sherlock episode that will explain why the past season was so bad. So when they tune in next Sunday and they find that it's not a fourth Sherlock episode, it's actually a drama called Apple Tree Yard on the BBC, they kind of flipped out. So that is the secret fourth good Sherlock episode. And I feel like fans are really in that territory right now for the Interstellar Song Contest. The Entity from the Well, I'm not including that. Otherwise, Midnight would technically be a loose end from Series 4, because that thing maybe got away. Unit Skull Kaijus. Cherry Sunday's Cup of Tea. There we go. So this is everything that is still in play come the reality war next week. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, once I caught a fish alive. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, then I let it go again. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 loose threads. Wish World has done so little legwork in actually starting to pay off some of these things. It's gonna break. I know we have a 65-minute runtime next week, but it's not good. Please analyze the Interstellar cliffhanger, so ugly and badly directed. Oh, actually, the best way to do this, the best way to showcase this is with the Giggle. Yeah, compare this by generation to the Giggle. You get these really strong shots from Chanyu Button, like this one, going over. There's nothing like that in this scene. Nothing like that remotely. There's just, yeah, there's not a lot going on. The sets are of a comparable size, but this one just feels a lot bigger. The framing's a lot more dynamic as well, because you have Donna Noble on this side, and then you have Bonnie Langford on the other side. Melanie Bush.
We've bi-generated.
Yeah, that's a weird cut. That's a really weird cut. We've bi-generated. She's looking camera right. She's already moving. Where's she come from? You can see Anita Dobson looking right past her. Who was she talking to? Because if she was talking to Punjabi, she wouldn't be looking in this direction. Yeah, where's she been facing? So she said, we've bi-generated. She said we. So the dialogue implies that she's talking to her other version. And because of the shot before, of them having just separated, the shots don't match. You can justify that she's talking to the guys. But I think the way she says we've bi-generated... Let's look at the shot before. So she's looking at Punjabi. That makes sense. She's looking at Punjabi. These two are reacting. Why did she walk? She's already moving when the cut starts. The cuts aren't working. The cuts aren't organically flowing into the other. The shots aren't leading into the other. It's just a really messy thing. I think she walks forward to the guys and explains it to them. When she says we've bi-generated, she's talking to herself. Like, oh, we've done this. She's including her in the dialogue. But,
Evidently.
yeah, evidently. She's responding. So she isn't talking to these guys. These guys are just watching. They're not being engaged with. Hey, Winnie, did you hear the Rani? And you wanted to take a look? And then they just walk off camera, whereas you could have something like Utopia, you know, apples and oranges, I'll acknowledge. If you go to Interstellar Song Contest, the Rani is introduced in a mid-credit scene to two characters who do not know what a Time Lord is, let alone what a bi-generation or a regeneration or a Rani is. And then she says, I'm the Rani, please clap. And then the Ranis just walk off camera. That's the introduction. But then you go to Utopia, and firstly, the introduction is, you've got Captain Jack as well, so that's like another returning element. But you spend an entire episode with Professor Yana, this really lovely professor character who the Doctor genuinely bonds with and is really, really lovely and great. And then it's also seeded in with the fob watch from Human Nature. Martha recognizes the fob watch and encourages him to open it. When Martha explains to the Doctor's reaction as well. Remember, the Rani announces herself to two characters who have no idea who she is. When the Doctor is told that there might be another Time Lord, what did he say? He's genuinely terrifying here. His performance is doing so much heavy lifting, not to mention Murray Gold's All the Strange, Strange Creatures music, not to mention the You Are Not Alone unveiling, Graham Harper directing the ever-loving hell out of it. Like, watch this shot. It's given so much heft, so much gravitas, and then Derek Jacobi, does this really slow, ominous turn to the camera as the music crescendos. And then he does his whole I am the master and kills his pseudo-surrogate companion in Chantho. And then strands the Doctor, Jack and Martha, at the end of the universe, regenerates, steals the TARDIS, and then that's the cliffhanger. Compare that to this.
As for the Doctor,
This is sourceless. This is sourceless, and I am so sorry. I had so many people when Empire of Death dropped saying Russell T Davies finales were always shit, and I'm like, Parting of the Ways would like a word. Doomsday, while not perfect, would like a word. And then when Interstellar Song Contest dropped last week, I genuinely had so many people in the comment section saying, oh, the Rani reveal, it's the same as the Master. In fact, people didn't know who the Master was in 2007. Am I being gaslit here? Did you just hate Russell T Davies Era 1? Like, what the fuck? Come on.